Welcome to the AirCon Vault, recordings of the live streams from AirWiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effect, Game Audio Learning, Kilohertz, Audio Kinetic, Soundcuts, Tsugi, Boom Library, Sound Warriors, and AirWiggles, the online home for audio people.
I am Woody Woodhall. I am a re-recording mixer, supervising sound editor, and a sound designer. I own a company called Allied Post Audio in Santa Monica, California. We've been doing it since the year 2000 as Allied Post. So that's a good 24 years in. We do feature films, we do television programs, we do feature documentaries, and pretty much anything that involves audio. So podcasts, audiobooks, voice recordings, and not really game audio, although we did some game audio for a bit. So that's Allied Post, but I also have another company called Los Angeles Post Production Group, which is AKA LAPPG. And LAPPG is a networking organization for post-production folks. LAPPG has been around. Actually, we're celebrating our 16th year this month. And we produce monthly events for the post-production community. We have produced over 200 events to date, with many more coming. We have a thriving YouTube channel, which has a lot of our events on there. We try very hard to get them up there as quickly as we can. And we have fantastic partners. We have the biggest partners in the world in post-production. We have AJA, Blackmagic, Zeiss, Isotope. I'm going to forget people. I should stop. Avid. Those are our partners. And I always encourage everyone to join LAPPG. It's lappg.com, because membership is free. The meetings are free, membership is free, and we give away a lot of good stuff. In fact, I saw one of my students and one of my LAPPG members, Allison, who won last month, won an install of RX11. So our good friends at Isotope have made that available to our members. We give away stuff. We give away a lot of stuff. And I can tell you, over the last 16 years, we've given away tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. Yes, Lewis, we all love free stuff. I encourage you to join LAPPG. There's no obligations. We don't spam our lists. We don't sell our lists. We have over 5,000 members worldwide. We used to only meet in Los Angeles, but COVID sort of changed everything in our world, and LAPPG changed along with it. And so now our meetings are virtual. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow, because if there's a month coming, we have an LAPPG coming. And so we are celebrating our 16th anniversary tomorrow night, and we're giving away a lot of good stuff, including a Blackmagic design micro panel. And our presenters are going to be our good friends at AGA, who happen to be our platinum sponsors. So, thank you, Allison. Indeed. Yes, that's the one, lappg.com, Frank. Okay, so I'm going to get right to it here. We're going to be talking about sound in frequencies and layers, and thinking about sound and sound design for that. I tend to lose my train of thought. I tend to speak in tangents. So to keep myself on track, I usually have a PowerPoint. So I apologize in advance for that, but I'm going to share my screen here. And so designing sound, frequencies, and layers with me. And so surprise, surprise, pictures only tell half the story, right? Motion pictures started motion pictures. Nobody was talking about sound. In fact, dialogue was written across the screen. Eventually they started having live music playing, and then of course they figured it out and they married the two together, and so now we have motion pictures the way we think of them. George Lucas was the one who famously said that sound is 50% of the motion picture experience. I think some of us know that it might even be more than that at times. But there's a great quote by one of my favorite filmmakers, Akira Kurosawa, and he says that cinematic sound is that which does not simply add to, but multiplies 2 or 3 times the effect of the image. And the reason I like that quote is because it sort of tells the truth about marrying sound with images. You can have a DP who's making the most amazing pictures, setups, compositions, moves. But when you add sound to that, whether the sound is music, whether the sound is backgrounds, whether the sound is sound effects, there's kind of some weird alchemy that happens that makes it more than just picture and sound. It becomes more than the sum of its parts. We become emotionally attached in a different way than we would if it was just the images. Ron, of course, fantastic film. Thank you, Terry. So one of the things that I like to talk about when I talk about these things is the art of listening. As sound people, we need to learn how to listen and not just hear. We hear stuff all the time. Oftentimes when I'm talking to my wife, we don't hear each other at all. What? But for our work in doing sound, we need to learn to listen. We need to get rid of this intense focus that we have, this ability that we have as humans to block out everything to whatever we're hyper focused on. Because life isn't like that. Microphones pick up everything. So it's really key that we sort of unlearn the blocking that is innate as humans to really listen to the sounds that are around us. And really, sounds in life are in layers of sounds. So for instance, I live in Santa Monica, and it's a lovely little town. We live near the beach. The Pacific Ocean is right down the block. And a half a block from my house here, where I'm sitting in my home studio, there is a nice little street of boutiques and restaurants, and it's a very busy little area. So right outside my window here, there are cars endlessly parking, leaving, coming, door slams, people, pedestrians, chatter, footsteps, dogs. Got a lot of dogs living in the neighborhood, so a lot of barking, dogs meeting each other, birds, of course, right? It's outside. So there are a number of layers of sounds happening just outside my window here. It's not just birds outside my window. There's a lot going on, right? There's people, there's stuff, there's cars, there's trucks. Living in Los Angeles, of course, there's helicopters. There's the Santa Monica airport. So there's airplanes, a lot of stuff going on. I can tell you that 99% of the time I don't hear any of it because I'm hyper focused on whatever I'm working on. But our life is filled with these layers of sounds. So now let's take it from the outside to the inside, right where I'm sitting right here. I hear my computer, right? I hear my Thunderbolt expansion chassis that has my Pro Tools card and my video card. Well, those have fans in them. So I'm hearing those sounds in there. There's the air conditioning in the house. So there's those sounds right here surrounding me. Then there's the sounds in the house itself, right? There's the sound of the refrigerator and the ice maker clunking sounds back down. There's my dog out there. There's a dishwasher and a washing machine. So there's endless layers of sound everywhere we are in life. And let's go even a step further, right? Because that sort of sounds obvious. Well, there's layers within those layers, right? So it's not just the layers of sound surrounding us, but there's the layers within the layers. So what do I mean by that? Well, so a car passing me is not just a car passing me. It's not just some random car pass. It's a particular type of car. And that car, the sound of the car is the sound of the motor and the sound of the gears and the sounds of the tires on the road and the sounds of the road. Is there gravel on the road? Is there dirt on the road? So there's a little bit of that sound. So right there, just the car pass alone, you have motor, gears, tires, road. So there's layers right there. If I have people outside and they're getting out of their car, there's a whole bunch of things going on there, right? There's the sound of their car, the brakes, the doors. Let's say they have a kid, and so there's the sound of a baby buggy, and they get that out, and then they have to get that, and then they're chattering, and you hear the baby talking, but there's a dog, and the dog is barking. I mean, there are so many sounds surrounding us. And not only are there layers of these sounds, but each one of these layers has in it a tonal quality, a frequency quality. So a large car or a truck may have a very low frequency range. And the Teslas and all the electric cars out there that to me sound like a overgrown dust buster, just a really annoying, whining sound, is a very different frequency range than a big SUV with 8 cylinders or one of those muscle cars revving by the window. So when you're listening for sounds, you're also hearing different qualities of the frequencies that those sounds occupy in space. And so I think an exercise for those of us to do is to, and I do this all the time, and I teach a class, and this is my first lesson in class. This is my first homework for my students, is to sit somewhere, and I don't care where. It could be in your room, it could be in your front yard, it could be at a mall, it could be at a park, it could be at a concert, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're always surrounded by layers and layers of sound. And just sit there in whatever space you've chosen and write it down. Write down all of those layers of sound, and also write down the tonal characteristics of the sound. So it's not just a dog bark. It's a big dog barking with a low sounding bark, or it's a tiny, annoying dog barking with a little high pitched yappity yap, right? All of these things are different. A car pass is not just some generic thing. It's what kind of car? Is it an automatic car? Is it a truck? Is it a bus? Every one of these things sounds different and occupies a different frequency range. And so the point of this is to get you to start listening to things in life in a different way. You're not just hearing a car pass your window, but you're identifying what are the elements that make that car pass, and what are the frequencies that are involved in that whole bit of business. So that's your assignment for today, is to go out, sit down, and start tuning your instrument, right? You're a sound professional, you're a sound designer. you're a sound editor, and it's time to start tweaking your instrument and getting better at it. So now, how does this apply to all this other stuff? Well, it's always going to be about the story, right? Our job in sound is to enhance the story. And so there's going to be clues in the story for what we need to do to help our filmmakers tell the best story possible. You know, rarely, but occasionally we're lucky enough to get a look at a script before they've even shot. And, you know, that, of course, is a perfect world, which we don't live in, as we all know, because we all live in this world. But the text, if we have a chance to read the text, we may be able to offer some insights to the filmmakers when they're actually out shooting their film. Oftentimes when I'm working on a project, you know, I get these large crowd scenes where everybody's mouthing like they're talking and laughing or whatever, but they're not, because we're trying to record this intimate dialogue between two people sitting at a table, even though they're surrounded by others. And so oftentimes, you know, you get these empty scenes. And it seems a little, to me, it's a waste. It's a loss that they couldn't have spent a couple of minutes just recording wild sounds of crowds. You know, there's a high school cafeteria scene, and you got all these kids. You have all these people there. You're paying all these actors to be there. And so record that. Now, I tell you that, and you know, and you can go down the line. It's a boat movie, and you can record the sounds specific to that boat. It's a skateboarding movie. And you can record skateboarding sounds, whatever it is. I can tell you, having done this for a long time, that a lot of times filmmakers it doesn't occur to them to record all that stuff, because in their mind they're thinking, well, you have that, right? You have a sound library, right? You're going to Foley it, right? You're going to. But to me, it seems like a waste, because here we have the organic sounds with the people using the same equipment who could have easily, for a very short time, we don't need a lot of media to make things happen. Now that, of course, is if we are lucky enough to see the script. And like I said, most of the time, we do not get the opportunity to see the script. So we're working from having seen the locked picture. That's fine. So now you're watching this picture and you're writing notes, right? It's a good idea to create a map of the sounds that you need for this film. I mean, what sounds are going to be key to the story that you're going to tell? You have a scene. Let's say you don't have a scene. Let's say you have a film that takes place on a boat. And there's a lot of different sounds there. You're going to need the sounds of the waves, of course. You're going to need the sounds of the set. You're going to need the sounds of the waves. You're going to need the sounds inside the boat. Maybe you're going to have scenes that are below deck. So you may need the sound of the water rushing from below deck. You may need the sound of the metals clanging against the mast. You may need the sound of the canvas sails, or maybe it's not a sailboat. Maybe it's a motorboat. What kind of motors are they? So you need to really determine what are going to be the key sounds for your film. As I said, most of the time you will find that they're not recorded. And I take your point there, Daniel, about the fact that sometimes they do record this wild stuff and it just exists on a drive somewhere. Nobody even bothered to let us know that it's there. That's a conversation that you have with the filmmaker. Hey, you didn't do this. And then they'll go, no, we did this. And then I tell them, go find it. Go find those sounds for me if you can. But you need to determine all these different sounds that are particular to the universe of your story that you're telling in sound for your filmmakers. What's going to define time and space, right? In the simplest convention of filmmaking, if we hear crickets on a fade up, it's going to be night. If we hear birds on a fade up, it's going to be day, right? That's a given film convention. We don't, we don't cut to a cricket. We don't cut to a bird. Oh, daytime. It's just convention, right? Because our brains are wired for that. Plus, as people who have seen films many, many times, those conventions have sort of evolved over the years. And that's fine. And it's appropriate. And I use birds and crickets in everything I do. However, you're doing a sci-fi film. So what are the sounds for your film and your film universe that are going to define time and space? You need to be mapping all this out. What are there going to be sounds that are required to create mood and feeling? Is it a David Lynch type of film where you have these low hums and low drones that sort of you just have two people talking in a room, and for no reason that you can think of, you feel really uneasy. It's because there's this low drone sort of subliminally playing throughout the soundtrack that makes you feel on edge. Or a horror film that's using a very high-pitched squeal that's blended in, again, giving you some sort of dis-ease, unease when you're listening to the soundtrack. Also, what sounds are diegetic or non-diegetic? Diegetic means sounds that the characters themselves can hear. And you should be mapping those scenes out. And sometimes scenes go from diegetic to non-diegetic, right? So you have, a couple of characters in a car with the top down, and they're rocking out to a song on the radio. So it's diegetic. They're listening to the music, and now we pull out, the camera pulls out on a big drone shot of the car pulling away, and now the music goes from diegetic to non-diegetic. So instead of sounding as if it's coming out of the car, now it's full frequency music or whatever. Every show you do is going to be different. So every sound map that you create is going to be different. But this is your script of the work that you need to do to help your filmmaker tell the story. So we're thinking about sound. We're making a map of our audio. We have now decided what our main components are going to be. This mostly takes place on the ocean. I'm going to need a lot of water sounds. Start poking through libraries of finding excellent sounds that meet the needs of the film. We're thinking in terms of the layers of the sounds that we need, but also in the frequencies of the sounds that we need, so that the high-pitched clanking of the metal with the mid-pitched canvas, with the low-pitched rushing sound of the water, we're complementing the build that we're making. Sorry, I'm trying to read the things as I'm blabbering on here. And we're trying to complement our build within the sound frequencies, because what we're doing here is multi-track, right? You have a film that's 20 tracks deep, or you have a sound effects bed that's 20 tracks deep, or you have just your backgrounds is 20 tracks deep. You're starting to layer sounds on sounds. If all of them are contained within the same frequency range, it's defeatist. You're not helping yourself. particularly nowadays. You know, when I first started a long time ago, you know, we didn't have great sounding libraries. The libraries that we did have were noisy because they were originally recorded analog from Nagra and transferred over in 16 bits or whatever. And nowadays we have these libraries that are just beautiful, pristine, and very, very useful. And so there's really no reason to not to find the best sound of sounds available to you. So so I want to show you the screenshot. So this is a feature that I'm working on now. It's a narrative feature film. It's a little over 2 hours long. This is just one tiny snapshot of, let me see, was that about 9 or 10 tracks. This is just backgrounds, and this is only 9 or 10 tracks of the backgrounds. I think the backgrounds are probably more like twice that. But it's important to, I thought it would be important to show you what I'm talking about when I talk about layers of sounds. You know, anybody who works with me, you know, I have had the same sound effects. I'm hearing a truck outside right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Very low sound, has several different characteristics in the sound, but I digress. Sully, who's worked with me for a long time, he knows what I'm looking for. He knows that I'm not going to be happy if I see layers of sound effects and they're all within the same tonal range, right? They need to be different. So, and you know, you can say, well, what difference does it make? Let's say you have 3 backgrounds, like for instance here, I don't know if you can see the mouse. It looks like you can see that. So these backgrounds here, this is a scene in a jungle hut kind of thing. There's a lot more backgrounds than just those 3, but there's only, you know, I wanted to make a simple screenshot, so this is what you get. But so each one of these have a very different tonal range. One is sort of high squawking birds. One is along the mid-range of wind and water. And another one is a low sound of jungle sounds. So it's built into the sound edit that these sounds already complement one another. So you can just hit play and they're not clashing with one another. Now you could say, well, sure, but isn't that what a mixer is going to do? I mean, frequencies are dealt with using an EQ. So your mixer can just go ahead and EQ, roll off the bottom of this and put a little bump at the top of this or whatever, and so that they're not all fighting. Absolutely. You can do it that way, but why are you making extra work for your mixer? Your mixer's got a lot of other things to do than to sit and tweak the EQ of these thousands of layers. And so by making it native as part of your edit, you are making a much cleaner sounding soundtrack. You're helping tell a better story through the sound, and you're making life easier for your mixer, who you hope hires you again to cut sounds for them, because they'll be like, dude, his edits are fantastic. And you know, this is just a little slice of this show, right? This is just a slice of the backgrounds. This is just a stereo background. So there's mono backgrounds, there's surround backgrounds, but there's also the hard effects, right? There's the you know, the car passes and the, you know, door slams and all of those things in hard effects. There's the Foley tracks, right? You have cloth, you have footsteps, you have body pats, handshakes, all of that stuff. And then let's not forget, you're going to have music, of course. And then on top of that, you're going to have, lots and lots of dialogue tracks. Because as much work as we put into building a soundtrack with this kind of detail and these kinds of layers, at the end of the day, we're telling the story with dialogue. So if any of this stuff, if our audiences can hear this work that we're doing, we blew it. Because the whole idea, they say that picture editing is the invisible art, but honestly, I think sound and sound mixing is the invisible art. Because if you hear, in quotes, what we're doing, then it takes the audience out of the experience. You know what? I'm just going to blast through this and then I'll go back through the chat. Just don't worry, there's not a lot left. Okay, so this is just drilling down a little more. So this is a closer zoom in. This is probably maybe 3 minutes of this one little chunk of just this little bit of backgrounds. But so if you look at the way it's cut, you can see that it's cut by cut, right? We're following the scenes. We're going from scene to scene to scene. Obviously, we're not just layering in one background, even if it's two groups of people who are, say outside. We're not just going to lay one background in. We're going to a background for their side and a background for their side. And of course, in my world, I don't do one background because there isn't one background. There's going to be a layer of bird background. There's going to be a layer of wind background. There's going to be a layer of traffic background. There's going to be a layer of walla background. So there's going to be lots of different aspects here. And you can just by looking at the waveforms, you can see that there's a lot of different business going on within those waveforms. And you see that there are edits, very specific edits in some of these backgrounds. And those are to accentuate a particular point. So if there's a bird background and the bird is a cool sounding bird and you're in between lines of dialogue, sometimes in the work that we do, we can sort of subliminally help the story along by putting the bird squawk in right when they finish their argument or something like that. All kinds of stuff that we can do if we really thought about the work that we're doing. And so looking at this a little closer now, you can see when we're layering all these sounds in, all these multi-track sounds, if our sounds were all at, say, 200 hertz, if this chunk of sounds here was all at 200 hertz, well, it's just going to sound like a mess, right? Who's going to care that this has all this different business in it? Because you're not going to really hear it distinctively. And your mixer might start soloing each one out and saying, oh, well, that one's good, that one's good. I guess I'm going to have to EQ the bottom off of that one, and I guess I'm going to have to EQ the top on this one so that I can tweak it. But because the libraries are so inclusive nowadays and there's so many great recordings out there, I always think it's better for the sound editor or the sound designer to go ahead and make those choices from the beginning. I work with some really terrific people out here in Hollywood, of course, some of the best people. And, I work with a dialogue editor who she turns everything off. She turns all the automation off. She turns all the plugins off. Everything that she does is with room tones and crossfades. When she hits play, she wants the thing to sound seamless just from the work that she's done with crossfades and room tone. And because she knows if she can make it sound that good there, then the mixers are going to be able to take it much, much further. And the same is true here. It does seem kind of crazy when you think about it, the amount of time and effort spent on all of these layers of sound effects and all the time spent on all of this, um, because, you know, people are listening to these two actors talking. They're not thinking about all of this stuff, but we are, right? This is our job. We're proud of the work that we do. No one knows what we do. When I tell people that I'm a supervising sound editor, or when I tell people that I'm a re-recording mixer, they say to me, "Oh, you add the music," and I say, "Yes, I do," and move on. Um, More of the same here, just layers and layers of stuff. You want to make sure that you're picking sounds that are complementing one another and that are in different ranges of sounds. I wanted to also look at, it's not just backgrounds. Backgrounds was easy, right? To put that on there because you could just clearly see, wow, there's a whole lot of layers of stuff going on here. But, you know, so for instance, this is just a little, I don't know, 15 seconds of the film of one little chunk where these characters are in a car. So we're having the exterior of the car and then the interior of the car. And each one of these is a car pass. All right. So, you know, you could choose if you wanted. Let's say you're on an exterior scene and there's a lot of cars. And so you find a nice busy car background and you just throw your busy car background in. And just due to the alchemy of matching sound with picture, you know, you might be 90% right. They might feel like they're all hitting at the same time. But we're not going to do that, right? We're going to do our best to make it seem as real as possible. That there was a microphone at every section, at every frame of this film, picking it all up beautifully. And so each one of these is an actual car pass in the picture. And each one of these is a different car to mimic the different cars that are passing. And each one of these has a different panning, right? Some might be going left to right, some might be going right to left, or whatever. Here we see an interior car sound. You see how that's just sort of like a constant hum, right? I want to show you the next slide here, which is this one. This is drilling down a little deeper. So now we're further into the scene. Again, this is probably all of 30 seconds of one scene. But, you know, this right here mimics, this edit here mimics what's going on in the scene, right? Because a car, yes, we're inside of a car and we can throw that interior car sound. We have people talking, there's music playing. Who cares, right? Really. But I care, right? I've been doing this a long time. And thankfully, I've been doing it a long time, maybe because I do care about the things that I'm doing. So you'll see here that this looks like an acceleration, right? So we know the car is accelerating. So there are all these tiny edits in here mimic the picture as the car is driving along. Here is tires. Here is gravel. Here's a place where you can see the characters in the film hitting bumps. The car itself is hitting bumps as they're doing it. And so we cut each one of these to match, sync the bump of the car. And now, again, all of this work for a short interior car scene where the car is moving. There's also backgrounds going on beyond this. There's also Foley going on because it's two people in a car and they're dealing with papers. So we have all the papers and the papers are all cut to sync. And we have the performers are talking, right? And so that's really what's driving the story along is the sorry, losing my train of thought here. Is the dialogue, because the dialogue is what's driving the story, not our backgrounds or our fantastic Foley work and so on. But again, this is the way we need to think, right? I'm working in Hollywood, right? This is where the best of the best stuff gets made. I'm lucky enough to know some of the people who work on some of those gigantic films and see that this is the way it's done. And this is the way I work. And I encourage those of you who are pursuing this to do that. Most of you probably already do. That's the nice thing about our work is that, I'm always amazed when I talk to other sound people, because we work in these very secluded, dark rooms by ourselves, oftentimes for weeks or months at a time. And so one of the reasons why my wife and I started LAPPG was so that we could be exposed to each other. Why are we always reinventing the wheel? This person knows that person knows that. Let's share these ideas between us. Besides the other things that I do, besides the sound that I do and LAPPG, I also have other pursuits that I do. And one of them is I'm lucky enough to interview some terrific people. Pro Video Coalition, which is one of the websites that I write for. I just did an interview with Richard King regarding his work on Oppenheimer. And there's also a fantastic group called Manhattan Edit Workshop, and they run a series called Sight, Sound, and Story. And Sight, Sound, and Story talks to various professionals, and I'm lucky enough to be able to talk to some of these folks specific to sound. So some of those are on my website, alliedpost.com. I'll put up a screen in a second with some contact info. But the reason I mention that is because several years ago, I did an interview with the sound team from The Revenant. Randy Tom was the sound designer on that film. He designed the sounds of the bear. And he was talking to me about working on the sound on that film. And the director, Alejandro Inarritu, you don't win an Oscar, you don't win an Emmy, and the biggest awards that are available for the work that we do, unless you really care about sound. He cares about script, he cares about his actors, he cares about the composer, he cares about the DP and all the rest of it, but he cares about his sound too. And Randy Tom is the director of sound design at a small sound house called Skywalker Ranch. And Randy Tom's been at it a long time. He's worked with George Lucas for a long time. He's a fascinating guy and wonderful guy to talk to. And he told me this word that Inarritu kept telling him during the sound design phase of The Revenant, and the term is this cacayanga. And as far as I know, it's a made-up term. But what he meant by that was this sort of undefinable thing that's in the sound that doesn't necessarily correlate to anything inside of the scene, but added some depth or texture to the soundtrack. And so if he would play a scene if Randy played a scene for him, he would say, yes, it's perfect, but I need the cacayanga. I need some cacayanga. So, and it's funny, because I teach sound, and a lot of times my students will say, yeah, I was auditioning sounds for this scene, and I was doing this, and I tried all this other, and by accident, this sound played, and it worked. I don't know why. It wasn't meant to, and it wasn't in sync, but it just kind of worked. And I think in a way that's what Inarritu was talking about, this concept of cacayanga, this kind of uncorrelated sound. So think about sound in layers. Think about the frequencies of sound. Teach yourself to do that. It's a very simple thing to do. You just got to sit around and listen. And then when you're building your soundtrack, if there are moments for cacayanga, look for that. So that's really the talk for now. I can answer some questions for the last few minutes. I do have a textbook called Audio Production and Post-Production. My blog is at provideocoalition.com/Woody Woodhall, or W Woodhall, I think. And that has my interviews. I have some great interviews with some great people. My website is alliedpost.com, and there is a page on there that has some of my interviews with Sight, Sound, and Story. The last one I did was the sound guys who did the feature doc. Shoot, what was the name of that? It was the movie with Bono and The Edge that David Letterman interviewed them. Fantastic show. And then my group, LAPPG. We are now worldwide since we do virtual meetings. And like I said, membership is free, and the meetings are free. We don't spam you, and we don't sell our list. We honor our members. So join us if you are so inclined. So I guess I'll stop this here. Now let's see what you guys have to say. Someone mentions the room next to the bathroom with the fan on. Yes, indeed, that occupies a lot of low end. Living next to an Air Force base, well, my condolences. But I will say, get a good microphone, get a good recorder, and get those sounds, because you never know when you can use them. Yes, Daniel, as I had mentioned when I was talking and I saw it out of the corner of my eye, the assistant editor is really, if it's a project where they fortunately would have an assistant editor and maybe a post super, the assistant editor is really the keeper of the media. And so hopefully they will assemble a folder of wild sounds that gets labeled and gets sent to audio post turnover to somebody like me. And usually I will ask, hey, did you happen to capture those kids in the cafeteria? Did you happen to capture any of the skateboarding? Did you happen to capture whatever? Sometimes they'll be like, yes, we did. And then I'll say, let's see if we can find that material. Yes, 4th of July is a great time to get fireworks sounds for sure. One little trick that I tried with my dog was I created like a 30-minute fireworks loop that I will play for the next month or so to get my dog used to the sounds. And so I play it low, and then I turn it up, and I turn it up and turn it up, and then I play it over a period of days till eventually it's just something that she hears. So for any of you who are dog owners who live in the US and have to deal with their terrified dog, build yourself a little fireworks loop and train your dog to not listen. Yes, Daniel, totally subverting your expectations with sounds. That's a wonderful thing. We can offer that. sometimes we can say, hey, I think it would be really cool if we tried this during a scene. But the sad thing, well, not the sad thing, but the thing, let's not make it sad. The thing that we have to remember when we work on these projects is that they're not our projects. They are the filmmaker's project. And so in the spotting session, when I'm first working with the filmmaker and trying to understand what they hear for the soundtrack, it's important to have a sense, because there could be a scene, say, that's just a crazy Foley scene. You have all these people and all this business and all this stuff going on. And it's a good idea to ask, what are your intentions for the sound for this scene? Because I've been in the situation where you build these gigantic sequences like what I just showed, and then they say, oh no, we have a music cue for that. Yeah, we're going to drop all the sound out there. It's just going to go to the soaring, majestic music cue. And, there's 5 days of work that just went out the window. So it is a good idea to understand that. And sometimes you're lucky and you work with a filmmaker who really understands sound or is really experienced. And generally, if someone's making more than one picture, more than one television show, they're learning on the job. And so each subsequent time, they're learning more and more. And so maybe they will be more experimental in the choices that they make. Let's see what else here. Do you compose a layer so that they are in a musical key altogether? Well, that's an interesting question. No, not typically. Sounds are very specific to whatever it is that you're doing. So if you're in a jungle scene, the timbre of those sounds will be one thing versus the timbre of a park, versus the interior of an office building, versus the layers of the sounds of a car, like I showed. So it would be difficult to sort of pick and choose a musical choices for that, if I'm understanding the question quite. But it is the same concept of choosing sounds to occupy a frequency space, the same way you would with music. I play music. I write and produce and mix music besides, television and movies. And it is a very different beast. And you specifically have to be mixing and thinking in terms of frequencies, because guitars are going to be here and the kick drum's going to be here. To apply that specifically musically to layers, I'm not sure. But if you do, let me know, because I'd like to hear it. Terry, going out and recording your own stuff is key. That's why I always, when I watch a film and I get a sense of what it is I need and I make my map of what sounds I'm going to need for that film, I will then look through my library and see what I have. I will then look through commercial libraries and see what they have. And if I find that there's sounds that are not acceptable to me or are not going to do the job, or I just can't find them, because that happens too, then I go out and record them myself. And there's a lot of sounds that I have that I record myself. There's stuff that you can't find, like, we have a lot of parks here in Santa Monica, and on Saturdays they have Little League games and they have soccer games and stuff like that. And so I can go out sort of surreptitiously with a bag and a backpack and a recorder and a mic, and just record 30 or 40 minutes of that. And then I can take it home, I can juice it up, make it sound really good, cut up all the stuff that isn't useful, and make a 2 or 3 minute background of a game. And you can do that 100 different ways in life. Go to a mall, go to an office building, go to whatever. Create your own backgrounds. They're going to be much better. They're going to be better recorded. They're going to be very specific. You're going to know it inside and out. And you can use those sounds yourself. They're going to be royalty free. They're yours, or you can sell them. Edit question: any instance where you use equal gain rather than equal power? You know, it's always a per use basis. You just have to put the fade in and see what works best. But typically, equal gain is going to be seamless, and that's what we want, right? We don't want to ever call attention to what we do, sadly, because we do a lot. Do you mix the layers with LUFS in mind, or do you follow? I'm sure maybe it's per scene type of thing. As a game developer, I go by asset and the mixture. You know, I never mixed for games. I don't really know the ins and outs of games so well. But in my world, LUFs are typically measured as an integrated part of the program. And typically the dialogue is what's leading that meter reading. So, you know, I wouldn't run just my backgrounds through a meter to see where they're hitting. It's the blend of it all. So I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question for you. Your parents ask you twice a year what you do. I can relate. When working on a feature, do you recommend splitting into reels in order to isolate potential tweaks, or working on the project as a whole? Haven't worked on reels since I was getting films that were shot on film. And, you know, I did plenty of 5 and 6 reel films. But, you know, working in Pro Tools, each reel is a different session. So reel 1 is hour 1, and reel 2 is hour 2, and reel 3. And then you got to pull it all together anyway. Nowadays, since everything is digital and I get a QuickTime ProRes or whatever, that's the length of the film, there's really no reason for us to cut it into bits. So like musicians add ear candy to their music, sound effects folks add cacayanga. Absolutely. In fact, not only that, there's a wonderful short film out now from Skywalker Sound, and I think it's called Behind the Mac, Skywalker Sound, something like that. And one of the sound designer talks about how she always puts one particular sound. It's not really an ear candy thing. It's really more just a fun little Easter egg for herself. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, thank you, Blaine. Blaine put up my interview with Randy. That's got to be a few years old now. All right, well, it looks like we're rounding the bend here. So, question, you have any tips for reaching out to indie filmmakers as a freelancer and how to build a rapport? You just got to find out where they are. For us, it was LAPPG, but, you know, wherever any... Hey, Woody, what are you using Pro Tools for special position of sound, or do you focus on finding creating recordings that already have desire? You know, Allison, it's one or the other. You know, I don't choose sounds for their positioning. You know, because it's all determined by the picture. So typically that's going to happen as we go. Sarush, no, just go ahead and do it. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate this. I'm going to go to the Hangout in a minute if anybody wants to chat there. But let me just thank Lewis and Greg and the whole AirWiggles team. This is a tremendous effort that these guys put out. And you know, all of us in the audio community are very appreciative, and thank you very much for making it happen. You know, nobody knows more than me and my wife how hard it is to produce events and to make these things happen. And these guys really knocked it out of the park. So kudos to the whole AirWiggles team, the audio community, and I. Thank you. Thank you guys so much.